office and PMO at a strategic level. So now suppose a PMO, an organization is having a PMO at a strategic level, right? So the KPIs for such PMOs should be very well aligned to the strategic goal of the organization and also at what level they're setting up the PMO, okay? Whether it is a tactical level or a strategic level. So there are some guidelines, okay, that we all professionals from the PMO area, we need to follow. So I'll just come to that. Uh, I'll just go through what are those best practices, what are the best practices uh, that we should keep in mind and we should follow so that we have the PMO KPIs, which helps the organization for an effective, managing effectively managing the projects. So as I mentioned, I'll briefly talk about this, the maturity level, just like any software company, like, they have their process and they have a maturity level, like CMMI for software development companies. Now, for organizations having a PMO, they have a different maturity level. Once we start, it can be like, as I give an example, like some companies, the moment they get a project, they define some processes for that particular project, or they define some KPIs for that particular project, then they initiate this, start the execution of the project. So we can call the such organization, such PM organization as an ad hoc. They run in an ad hoc basis. Okay. So starting from ad hoc, there are five different maturity levels. Okay, ad hoc, consistent, integrated, comprehensive, and operations support. Operations support means that's the highest level of maturity where they can proactively like identify the gap areas, the problem that may occur that the project team might face. So they can proactively see, based on their experience, based on the processes defined, they can very well preempt some of the problems and provide the solutions to the project team so that the project eventually they are able to successfully deliver the project, right? Now, coming to that again, related with PMO maturity, there are certain indicators which can help organizations or PMO organizations to achieve success. So according to PMO Global Institute, there are certain indicators. We are showing here some, you can see some of the indicators, like for example, management and leadership. This is one of the key indicators which will tell us like how successful will be a PMO. If we are going to set up a PMO, or we are already having, and some organization is already having a PMO, if there is no involvement, no buying from the stakeholders, the chances of PMO being successful or being very effective is very less, right? Similarly, like, the engagement and involvement of the stakeholders and all the key people from the organization. Another indicator could be, let's say, performance management. Let's say we have a PMO, some organization is having a PMO, and the performance of the project team has been on, let's say, an average, right? Do they have any process in place or any mechanism in place which will help the professionals, the PMO, the project team to enhance their performance or not? That will decide whether the PMO is going to be successful. And today, if they're performing at 60%, whether they can achieve 80% or 90% effectiveness or not, right? So these are some of the indicators. They are very clear indicators. If you consider, in case you are doing a consulting, you know, assignment for a client where you have to define a PMO or define the set up a PMO and define the KPIs, you should keep these indicators in mind, and based on that, you should define the KPOs. Sorry, KPIs. Okay. Now, some of the, I would say, considerations or best practices when you are defining the KPIs for PMO, like alignment with strategic objectives, measurability and relevance. That is very important. Like, everywhere we talk about like smart goals, right? So similarly, the KPIs that we are going to define, we should be able to measure it. For example, let's say, let us take an example of a software development company. They are doing a development project and they define the one KPI as a success rate for a software development project. So just simply defining success rate will not be sufficient. Because it can be measured unless we say that, okay, for example, the defect rate should be less than 2% or less than 5%, right? So similarly, any KPIs that we are going to define, we should be able to measure, and it should be well defined in the PMO charter itself. When we set up we whatever KPIs we have defined, how we are going to measure, what we are going to do in case of a performance not being optimal and all that. So everything is documented. So it should be measurable and relevant for the particular type of project. And of course, there are KPIs defined based on the industry type also, which I'll just cover briefly in the later slides. Okay, balance between leading and lagging indicators, focus on process and outcome KPIs, stakeholder relevance and buy-in, risk and issues management. If you're identifying a risk, or you're defining a KPI, that this is how we are going to identify a risk, and then what are the measures, what are the actions that we are going to take, or the company who's implementing or setting up a PMO, they are going to take. So everything should be considered. Project delivery performance, resource utilization and efficiency. This is one of the most important KPIs. Suppose you have, like as I had given an example earlier, like large petroleum companies or even large manufacturing companies, they have a PMO where they have more than 20, 30 certified project managers. Now the thing is that how effectively they're being utilized, the resources, the skill resources, apart from project manager, they could be developers, there could be various people with different skill sets, how effectively they are being utilized, how optimally, that also defines the effectiveness and success of a PMO. We can't afford to have hundreds of project managers and just handling one or two projects at a time. So resource utilization is one of the key, should be one of the key KPIs for a PMO. Project delivery and performance, continuous improvement and learning. So basically, it is about learning from each project, any lessons learned. Generally, what we do is at the end of the project, any matured PMO, they have a process where the project manager or the project team is responsible. It's mandatory for them to document the lessons learned, any risks they encountered during the project. They have to document it. What was the issue, what was the risks that they encountered, what mitigation steps, actions they took, and all that. Okay, so that they can improve upon that, based on that, and adaptability and scalability. So similarly, the approach, as we talked about the considerations, so yes, your approach should be to consider all these factors when you are defining the KPIs for a PMO, depending on the organization type, even the industry type. Okay, I will touch upon that later. Now, the KPIs that we are going to define, it actually, they can be categorized into two parts. Okay. One is the internal effectiveness, and the other, some of the KPIs would depend on the project output. So I'll just give an example. So internal effectiveness, like for example, we have, let's say, when we get a project in a large organization, you get a lot of projects. The first and foremost thing for the PMO is to have a process, a mechanism in place to identify whether this project can be considered as a small, medium, or large, or simple, medium, or complex. Because if, let's say, it's a small project, okay, it's a minor enhancement project, for example, talking about IT project. Suppose this is a small project and it can be delivered within a short period of time. It is not necessary to go through the entire process of documentation, validation, and the whole process, which are actually meant for large and complex processes, which can run for years or at least a year, right? So if we have some process or mechanism in place where we can easily classify the project as a small, medium, large, and based on that, we can say that, okay, now this project falls under a medium category. These are the processes, these are the documents to be generated, these are the processes to be followed. So what will happen is the PMO effectiveness, the time spent on this, the time spent by the project team would be less, right? Unnecessarily creating 10 documents, 20 documents, it does not make sense. So this was just an example. Similarly, there could be some other example of internal effectiveness is that, okay, we are able to deliver, like let's say we have one project manager and few members in that team who can deliver at least 10, 15 projects concurrently. So we are effectively utilizing the resources. So resource utilization can be one of the measures of internal effectiveness of a PMO, right? Now, next, the other type of KPIs could be project output. So, for example, we get a project from a business, and by doing that project, the business says that, okay, if we do this project, if we develop an application, or if we implement or launch a new product, for example, your organization is going to get revenue of, let's say, up to 50 million. Now, when you're taking such projects, whether it is new product launch or a new application development or anything, you have to define and you have to define the process that how we are going to measure the benefit which has been conceived, the idea that has been conceived, that okay, we'll launch this new product in the market and we are going to get 50 million. How we are going to measure that? Okay. So we call it as a benefit realization, right? So we should have a benefit realization plan, that okay, the benefit which was thought of, which was planned or conceived, that okay, this project will give so much of benefit. How are we going to realize that benefit? So these are some of the things that KPIs should be defined, keeping in mind the project output or the project deliverables. I hope the things are clear. I would be happy to take up any questions later. Then, okay. So quickly, the top 10 KPIs as per the industry standard, what I have so far learned and I have, after going through so many reports and all I've seen. And of course, I'll not go through each of them, but quickly I'll just uh, try to briefly explain. So cost variance, everyone knows, like, okay, that we plan for a project. We have a a PMO office in place. We are given a project of, let's say, $10 million. And We start the project, we do the planning and everything, we start the project, and somewhere in the middle of the project, or by the time we have completed only 60% of the project, and we come to know that, oh, we have exhausted the budget. That should not be the case. So we need to have a proper mechanism to check, to keep in control the cost variance, right? Every time our cost variance, for example, we are having a PMO in a large organization where we deliver hundreds of projects. We should define that, okay, our cost variance, it could be 10%, not more than that, right? So that way you can define that, okay, our cost variance of our project should not be more than 10% or 15%. Okay. Schedule variance. Similarly, like, we plan for the project to go on for 6 months, or let's say 300 man days. Maybe 10% variance is acceptable, not beyond that. So that is how, I mean, some of these KPIs. So I hope that, and these KPIs, briefly, I have given the description is also given here. So I hope it's very clear, very obvious. But still, if anyone would want to ask anything specific to any of these KPIs, I would be happy to answer. But like, in the interest of the time, I would not go through each of them. Is that okay, Sohina and Supriya?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah. Okay.
And for those, I'll just take a second, Mr. Kumar. For
Yeah.
those of us who have joined us within the last few minutes, please feel free to log any questions you may have in the chat, and we'll be happy to take them up after Mr. Kumar is done with his presentation.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So these, as I said, these are the most common, and as per the industry standard, the most common KPIs that you should consider. It is not necessary, uh, like, there is no specific guideline that you should have 10 KPIs for your PMO. You can have five, six, KPIs which are very relevant, which aligns with your company's organization strategies, and which gives a very effective measure to measure your success. That should be fine. Five, six, eight, that's fine. Okay. Now, next, I will quickly give you some examples of the KPIs based on the industry type. Right. So let's take first of all, let's take the software industry, IT industry. In the IT industry, it can be a application development project, it can be maintenance project, it can be infrastructure projects, right? For example, data center projects, which I have been, largely doing data center migration, data centers setup. So if, let's say, in IT sector, the KP, if you are setting up a PMO for an IT company, your project delivery timelines, your budget adherence, right? On the lines of what I explained briefly in the previous slide, cost variance, schedule variance. That is, obviously, that's mandatory across all the industries, right? But apart from that, for example, defect rates, right? How many defects, if you talk about application development, software development project, this is one of the very important metrics, right? Defect rates. If it is a maintenance or support project, there's something called MTTR, right? Mean time to resolve. So my mean time to resolve should not be more than 30 minutes. Our team got a problem, support team, they got an issue reported, and on an average, they should be able to resolve that problem within 30 minutes on average. That is what is called MTTR. Right? Now, coming to engineering construction. So their KPIs would be slightly different. Apart from cost variance, schedule variance, they also need to have KPIs which, talks about their adherence to the safety norms, their adherence to the regulatory processes, or compliance with the regulatory norms. So that is how, even for healthcare and pharma, it's very, very important, particularly in healthcare and pharma. Uh, so I have managed the projects and program across, I would say, most of the industry except for telecom. Okay. So I know how important it is, particularly if you take a healthcare and pharma, health and safety, patient safety. And there are various standards you all must be aware, HIPAA and all that. So you have to see that your project, when you are delivering, if it is, let's say, a new product development, let's say development of a new vaccine, how compliant it is, because it is about the safety of the patient, right? So based on the industry type, certain KPIs must be defined apart from the standard like cost variance, schedule variance, resource utilization. Some KPIs should be in line with the industry. I hope it's clear, right? So now at the end, I have just to summarize, uh, like how do we, what are the steps involved, or I would say for people to understand what are the things we should keep in mind when we are going to define the KPIs for setting up a PMO in a large organization or medium-sized organization. First thing, the first task is to identify the organizational goal. For example, a new startup, they want to achieve, let's say they are into edtech, they want to promote or market their new educational products in, let's say, only within India or out of the country, or globally, whatever is their objective or their goals in next, which they envisage to see in that, to achieve in next 5 years or 10 years. First, you understand the organization goal or strategy. Okay. Then you also need to identify or see that they want to, the PMO has to be set up at a operational or tactical level or a strategic level. We know the three, the management pyramid, right? Whether we want to have our PMO set up at this level or a strategic level. Because based on that, the involvement of the stakeholders and buy-in from the stakeholders is required. If it's at operational or tactical level, you don't need to involve the stakeholders in every day or every week meeting. It can be like, once in a month or once in a quarter. So you have to identify that, and then you can have, then accordingly you can have your structure of your PMO and the KPIs you can define, right? So third step is your, once you have identified that which level you are going to set up a PMO in the organization, then you define your KPIs. Then, as per the industry standard, as I mentioned, so suppose you are going to set up the PMO at a strategic level, you know some of the KPIs very well. But as I mentioned, you are in the construction industry. I mean, you are working as a consultant advisor for a construction company who's going to set up a PMO. You will follow those norms. If you are in a pharma company, you will follow those norms which are required by the regulations or I mean, at international level or in within India also, right? Then the next important thing is that measuring that. You should be, the KPIs you define, you should be able to measure that. As I mentioned earlier, you document everything, how you are going to measure. For example, quickly, like let's say schedule variance. Suppose you have defined that KPI and you have a measurement criteria for that also. How do you measure that schedule variance? Suppose for one particular project, there was a huge variance in the, let's say, cost or in the schedule. Maybe because there was some specific, reason, some specific case due to which the schedule got extended, or there was a budget got extended for some reason. So that is fine. Maybe for some reason for one particular project, so that would not determine that, okay, your PMO is not effective or you have not defined the KPIs uh, properly. Okay. So you're measuring, you should be able to measure the KPIs that you need to document. So once you have the measurement criteria defined and documented, then you start delivering the project. Then what you do is you start measuring the project outcomes, right? And then you start measuring, you see somewhere that, okay, the performance, for example, the performance of the project success is only, let's say, 40%, 50%, 60%. So based on you need to look into your processes, you need to look into your KPIs, you might need to further improve upon or tweak upon some of the KPIs or their measurement criteria. And that is how you improve upon, and then you see better result when you have a fully functional PMO. So that's all in this presentation. So if there are any questions, anything anyone wants to highlight or share views, would be happy to take that up. Over to you, Sohina.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Now, moving on to our panel discussion from such an insightful presentation, we have Mr. Abdullah among us now. Thank you for joining. A little something about him. So, Mr. Abdullah, he is the founder and CEO of the PMO Global Institute. This is a globally recognized certification body for PMO certifications, including certified PMO professional, certified agile PMO professional, and agile PMO. Under his leadership, the Institute is driving a transformative mission to make PMO education accessible in 200 countries, fostering global standards in project management office practices and empowering professionals worldwide. All right. Uh, would you like to address the audience, Mr. Abdullah, and say a couple words? Now,
Yes,
before we begin with the panel discussion, Mr. Abdullah and Mr. Prashant, both of you are welcome to address the audience and say a few words.
thank you, Zohinik. Very good morning from London. It's about 6:15 here. I woke up very early morning around 4:30 in the morning because I didn't want to miss this excellent presentation and this specific topic today. So before I move on, I must thank on behalf of the entire team to Mr. Shushank for the brilliant presentation. So please bring your hands together to give a big round of applause to Mr. Shushank.
Thank
Outstanding
you, Mr.
presentation.
Abdullah. Thank you so much.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you. And then, I was saying that, there are questions for me in the panel discussion, but I see that all the questions already you have addressed during your presentation. Yeah. So I have to look for new answers, which you didn't give in the presentation. So outstanding, you have covered all of these things. Really appreciate that. So I will pass it to, Suhina to actually, manage your schedule as well as the flow of the session. So I'm still here. Just let me know when you need. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Abdullah. Over to you, Mr. Prashant.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for this opportunity being given. I know I'm part of the PMOGI, and it's great to be part of the community that is fostering, as you said, so the PMO excellence within the community. Very excited to be here, and then some good call outs by Mr. Shashank. Thank you, sir. And excited to sort of take on some questions and I can see how I can help, solve some of the questions that our participants today have in their minds, towards the PMO KPIs, that help the organizations align their structure and, what matters at the end of the day. Now, how do we marry both the KPIs and the organization's objectives and strategic goals? Right? So thanks for asking me to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Prashant. So let's start with the questions that we already have for our panelists. So, Mr. Shashank, would you like to talk about any instance where an organization successfully aligned its PMO KPIs with its structure and the impact that it brought along with it? And what role did leadership play in ensuring this alignment?
Yes, Sohina. Sure. I will try to. In fact, I will share one of my own experiences. Uh, One of my assignment recently was with this company called Petroleum Development Oman, okay, in Muscat. So since I talked about petroleum companies and number of projects they do, coincidentally, like, I have more than 8, 9 years of experience working for petroleum companies, including Shell, Exxon, Reliance Petroleum, Hindustan Petroleum, and Petroleum Development Oman. So Development Oman, basically it is actually owned by 60%, 64% stake owned by Oman government. Okay, it's one of the largest petroleum companies in the world. Okay, so obviously they also execute more than 200 projects every year. Okay, and so they have a so-called PMO. They had a PMO, and it's a very old company. You can just imagine it. They have, like, it's 130 oil fields, 14 gas fields, and 8,000 active wells. And you know that all the businesses are supported by IT only, right? So you can imagine the magnitude of the PMO for this petroleum company. Okay? They had a PMO, and they execute so many projects. So it so happened in somewhere in 2016 and 17, because it belongs to government of Oman, they had some telecom project to be rolled out across Oman. Okay. And so they started the project, and they are supposed to be being the being owned by the government. They are supposed to report the progress of the project every quarter to the Ministry of Petroleum, government of Oman. And somehow, I the project which was being rolled out of multimillionaire, Omani real, or dollar, you can call it. Somehow the project was not progressing well as per the plan of the government, and it was on the verge of, like, discontinue, the government deciding to discontinue the project. Okay? And when the government was about to take the decision, what they did, the PDO, the Petroleum Development Oman Management, they actually brought in this BCG, Boston Consulting Group, to study their processes, PMO processes. Okay, and they paid a huge amount to BCG to go through the process, PMO process. Okay, they came, and it went on for a few months, and then finally they submitted a report identifying the gap areas in their processes. And after that, you don't know what happened. BCG did not continue further, and then PDO asked Wipro. At that point of time, I was working with Wipro. So PDO asked Wipro to send some consultant to work on those gap areas and propose a new process, so that the project, because it was a kind of, very, you know I would say, the reputation at stake. So from Wipro, and because Wipro had a multi-year contract with them, we had, like, 300 people already working for PDO. So they had to send someone. So fortunately, I was selected for that. After, so many, I mean, out of so many profiles shared with them, they interviewed and all, I was selected, and I went there as a PMO advisor and consultant for PDO. Now I was given the report which BCG had given, and I had to study that and identify the gaps and that. So I started there. I was not sure where to start, and because their report was so, like, voluminous, and they had identified one of the main factors, I would say, one of the factors which was lacking, or which in fact negatively, which was going in, in a disadvantage of the people over there, was all these people, most of the people working there in IT were from different countries, not local people. Okay. Now, their objective of PDO was to align with the government norms, whatever telecom project. Basically, they wanted to implement some Wi-Fi solution across all these oil fields and, wells and all. So I would try to make it short. So this particular project, because it involved millions of dollars, and it was not going in the right direction because of some, non-standard process, or maybe they didn't have a check. Although there were processes, they were not being checked whether the processes are being followed or not, right? So uh, then me and my team, when we got into that, we looked into the entire report. We spoke to all the key stakeholders, right? The people from the upstream business or downstream business, how. So basically what we did is we came out with some processes where, and in fact, I'm happy to share that the process, end-to-end process is defined. First of all, to identify a project, the moment a project comes to the IT team or the PMO team, is to measure how, whether it is a simple, complex, or you know moderate kind of complexity project. How you define, then how you, as we talked about all these, right? How you define a project, which category it falls in, and then implement, and then ask the team to follow these processes and all. So the thing was that the organizational goal was to follow strictly and deliver the project in line with the Ministry of Oman,
Yeah.
which was lacking at that point of time. That okay, they had to deliver that telecom project rollout, and there was no timeline defined. And because the once a project gets extended, obviously your cost also goes up, right? So that way, we just focused on first the government, what the government regulation says. The Ministry of Petroleum in Oman says how many projects they are supposed to deliver, what kind of benefit it is going to give, whether this benefit will be only a business benefit to the to PDO, or it is going to give benefits to the government also, because this company obviously it supports the entire economy of Oman. So the processes, the PMO processes has to be in line with the organizational goal. And this is how, and this is the example of a company where we actually we worked, help or that organization defining the PMOs, and that entire PMO process, it's put somewhere in the corridors of this thing in PDO till now. I'm so glad about that. That's one of
So
my.
the KPIs have to be aligned to the
Yes, absolutely.
structure as well as the external forces that affect the way the business is functioning, right?
Yeah, and it is important while doing this, complete involvement of the top management or stakeholder
Absolutely.
is very important. Later, you don't need them for your, you know, day-to-day measuring or following the
Right.
process. But in the
Right.
beginning, it is very much required, because they are the one who know, like, okay, what is their organization, what is our organizational goal? Because
Right.
we as a consultant, I went there as an advisor, as a consultant. I could just see and read something. But we
Absolutely.
used to have every week, we used to sit with the CIO and other key stakeholders. That's
So
very
it is imperative to align your most impactful stakeholders with the
absolutely,
KPIs and
absolutely,
the other factors of the project. All right.
absolutely.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Kumar. I know we are already at the top of the time that we allotted for this webinar. We'll quickly move on to the next question, which I have for Mr. Prashant. Now, Mr. Prashant, you work in not in a typical PMO, but with product delivery, which has a rapidly changing or a very dynamic environment. So, what are some practical steps PMOs can take to begin aligning their KPIs with this kind of organizational structures? And how do you ensure that these KPIs remain relevant in such a dynamic environment?
Okay. So let me thanks for that question, Sohina. I think it is important for all of us to understand, right? As to why it is important to align the PMO KPIs, right, to the organizational structure. Why is it crucial? For me, it is crucial because it enables the PMO define its own objectives, its own KPIs that will help them to measure the outcomes, okay, rather than outputs. Nowadays, I see a lot of organizations talk about outputs, okay, but I would be a strong proponent of outcomes, and PMO plays a very crucial role in that. And then it's important that they align their KPIs, right, with the organizational structure. And how would these outcomes help? It basically by supporting the overall organization strategic priorities, right? Time to time, the organized do set their strategic priorities based on the changing, ever-changing market landscape, ever-changing customer needs, right? So it has to continuously evolve over a period of time, iteratively looking at what it is that the organization is expected to do, expected to bring to value to the customer, right? So there is always an alignment of the strategic objectives, the goals that the organization is looking for with what PMO does as part of the initiatives, various initiatives that it takes up, right? So that's one important thing that it helps with, okay? The alignment of strategic objectives with the PMO KPIs. It also fosters for the cross-functional collaboration, because we are living in an agile VUCA world, as we call it, right? And then agile as a overall framework that a lot of organizations have picked up as part of their go-dos, right? All the initiatives that they run today are more or less agile in nature, right? They sort of get into an incremental, iterative kind of a mindset. So wherein a lot of interdepartmental collaboration is very mandatory, right? For any successful initiative to be launched. Then the third part is that it supports, this alignment also supports the agility, as I was just calling out. It sort of supports the agility with, the changing market conditions, right? COVID came and, hit us hard, and then the edtech, industry boomed, okay? EdTech was nowhere to be mentioned before, prior to pandemic, right? But then came pandemic, and then suddenly market demands changed, and you will see a spur of EdTech companies launching themselves. And I work for an EdTech company, right? And we do a lot of good work for the US market. So this is what it is importantly. And then let's take some specific steps. Now, this may not be a exhaustive list, because given the time that we have at hand, um, uh, one of the things that I would understand is, in which I've already told, is in terms of understanding what the organization strategy is. What are we trying to do as an organization? What am I trying to do in the market, right? And so in order to do that, you need to collaborate with, the PMO needs to collaborate with the leadership teams, okay, to understand, hey, what is it that we are trying to achieve? Okay. And again, I'm trying to tie it back to the agile ways of working that the organizations do, right? They do a quarterly planning sessions to understand, hey, what do we do? What is our roadmap for the next quarter or 6 months, 2 quarters from now on? So you need to have that alignment. You need to understand, the PMO needs to align as to over the next quarter or two, what is it that we are trying to do? Okay, so collaborate with this leadership to understand what the strategic goals are. So, for example, let's say you're going for market expansion, right? Or it could be cost optimization, initiative that is being taken up. Okay, if it is looking at that, time to market could be one of the KPIs. Okay, and someone from the participants, they asked me, and I was telling that it all depends, right? If you are looking for a quick market capture, time to market is one of the important things. And as a PMO, your KPIs that you set for the various initiatives that you would drive, it would be a time to market KPI, right? So one of the thing is that understand what the organizational strategy is, how do the initiatives tie to that, and how PMO that is driving those initiatives, that is executing those initiatives, have to align itself, align themselves to those strategic needs. Okay. The second is in terms of mapping the key roles and responsibilities and the functions, right? Which Mr. Shashank also touched based upon.
Right.
As one of the indicators, maturity indicators, right? You need to really understand. And again, I take back, to what I said earlier. It's all about initiatives that are running organization wide. There is a lot of cross-functional, cross-departmental collaboration that is required. Okay. So as a PMO, one of the KPIs should be that how effective is your cross-functional collaboration happening, which will lead to a faster time to market, right? If you introduce delays, right, ultimately your value delivery hampers. Okay, so you need to look into KPIs being established that will define, okay, how faster, how quicker are my initiatives being launched, okay, that it can go and capture the market value, for me and for my organization and for my customers as well, right? Ultimately, we are sort of generating value to our customers.
Yeah.
The other one, which other two, I'll just take it, I'll just briefly call out, is basically engaging stakeholders. Again, Mr. Shashank aptly called it out in one of his slides, right? You need to ensure that stakeholders are, when I say stakeholders, it is the functional heads within the organization, the various departmental leaders that are there, the CXOs of the organizations, because they are the ones who are setting the strategy and the objectives and the goals, right? So you need to align your KPIs, to those strategic objectives, right? Again, time to market is one of the important aspect, I would say, in this agile
Yeah.
and we all need to understand one aspect, which is my last call out here. Is It is the KPIs once you set is not a one-time activity, right? You
Yeah.
cannot just, again, Mr. Shashank called out, you cannot just say that, oh, I've defined my KPIs and I'm done with it. No, you need to constantly evaluate whether these KPIs actually leading to value capture. Okay. For me as an organization, for me as a PMO department. Okay. So for example, I'll just take one example. Let's say, you are an ESG company, right? Environmental and social and governance, right? So sustenance and governance, right? So one of the things could be a green initiative, the number of green initiatives that the organization has taken up. Okay, so that could be one of the PMO KPI. Okay, how many of my initiatives lead to that strategic objective of my organization becoming a sustainable organization? Okay,
Yeah.
these are some of the steps that I would definitely watch for and be on the watch out for, a constant evolution of my PMO KPIs.
Absolutely. Thank you for that detailed answer, Mr. Prashant. All right. As we move on to take questions from the audience, our last question goes to Mr. Abdullah. Uh, what we would like to understand is how do you see technology influencing this alignment between PMO KPIs and organizational strategy in the coming years?
Thank you, Suhina. I really appreciate. So I was listening to both Prashant and Shashank's, very deep dive, explanation how to set KPIs and how to measure KPIs, right? It's not easy. First of all, setting up KPI is not easy. So before coming back to your question, Suhina, I would like to say that there is a nice concept we have developed called 10 cups tea. 10 cups of tea. What does it mean? Means, before even you set up your PMO, go and have at least 10 cups of tea with the stakeholders, right? So 10 cups, there is a reason why it's 10 cups, right? So because on an average you spend, you take one cup takes about 2 hours of discussions. Then you go for another one. So at least, you need 10 cups of tea. That means on average 20 hours try to spend with the top management that you have in the organization, because at the end of the day your organization top management is your client. For the PMO, you need to understand the pain points of your top management, and the requirement comes in, that becomes eventually the KPI for the PMO that you're setting up, right? So the concept is minimum 10 cups of tea
Mm.
with your top management, right? So this is your job as a PMO, this is your job to get these 20 hours from your management, right? So you have to spend time. Yeah. So coming back to the, sorry if you,
Supriya, can you please mute Mr. Mamoon?
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No worries. So we actually one of the early starter of developing AI-based technologies for the PMO. We have a software called Baseline PMO, and we started this 2017, saying that why, how we can improve our, operational efficiency, right? So that's why we invented PMO, software. 2017, we started working on it, still is available. But now the way the AI has disrupted the entire thing. This is something so comprehensive, right? So we can predict that AI can have that level of capacity, right? So I think whether you like it or not, we'll have to integrate AI, as well as we have to integrate, the automation tools to manage our PMOs, as well as the stakeholders, as well as the team members, right? So I think one of the speaker was saying a couple of months back that currently we have, on an average, the brilliant people has like 155, 160 IQ level, right? Even the brilliant one has like 160. So the way actually AI is learning by themselves. So we are busy with mobile phone, but AI is learning.
Yeah.
There's nice right. There's a nice jokes that AI, we are busy with mobile, but AI is learning on the back end. So if it continues, AI might have like 1200 to 1500 IQ levels in next couple of years, and that's a threat for us. There's no doubt about it. Even in many of the events, I said myself 1 year back that we human will be required, right? But yes, will be required. We need professionals, but still those professionals who can adapt technologies, who can take PMO decisions based on data, those who can actually manage stakeholders based on informed statistics and everything, right? So those
Yeah.
who professionals are adaptable, right? That's why we call agile PMO. They will actually survive, right? So our coming days actually, all of us will have to have more focus on it. We are also working on the to upgrade our PMO system, so that at least as a CEO, I manage multiple departments, multiple companies. If I have one assistant who can actually help me on my daily project management, PMOs and alls, that will reduce a lot of my time. So we'll be early adapter in this particular situation. So coming back to your questions, I think now technology is integral part of the whole system, whole PMO management, so we cannot actually get rid of them. But everybody remember, one takeout from today, along with lot many, is that 10 cup of tea. Spend at least 10 cup of tea with your stakeholder and top management to understand their requirement, their pain points, their expectation, so that you can bring the KPIs out of there. All right, thank you. What do you see?
Very insightful, Mr. Abdullah. So, 10 cups of tea with stakeholders, and all of this while keeping an optimistic approach towards technology and expanding our knowledge base so that we are always up to date with what's coming.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, panelists. So now we'll take questions from the audience who has been very flexible and patient with us even after we are at the top of the hour. One question that we have is on differentiating between project versus PMO KPIs. Either of you could take this, please.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that we should always understand is that PMO as an organization within any company runs these initiatives, right? The initiatives basically there are strategic objectives, there are strategic goals that ultimately lead to creation of various initiatives that the organization takes up, correct? And these initiatives are nothing but, in the parallel world, it could be a project or a big, large program, right? It's a set of constituent projects. Okay. So you need to understand that ultimately at the end of the cycle, the whole cycle, it's a project or a small initiative that you're going to take up and then run it. And it will have its own project KPIs, project level KPIs, and, in terms of schedule variance, in terms of cost variance, in terms of scope variance that's coming up. Okay, the number of changes that have hit the project and all those things, right? So those are some of the things that the project manager would eventually be looking at, and you sort of go a level higher up. We talk about programs, right, which are sort of constituent projects. And there you talk about benefit hypothesis, what has been the benefit for the program, for the organization as a whole, for the customer as a, at the end of the day. Okay, so there are certain benefit hypothesis that you will try to run through, and then come out with those related KPIs. And who is defining these KPIs? Okay, it is ultimately the PMO who says that, okay, fine, this is the strategic objective that I want to achieve. Okay, and then this is the initiative that we are running for the organization to achieve that particular strategic objective or initiative. Okay, so ultimately it is you are sort of getting those strategic objectives trickle down, into the initiatives, into the program level, into the project level. Okay. And then you sort of start tracking it. And then once you have those sort of KPIs or metrics that you are tracking at the project level, you roll it up, PMO rolls it up, from the various projects that it is running across the organizations to see, are the processes that I as a PMO have set up for myself, are they doing the justice? For example, resource utilization across various projects. Okay. Is my resource productivity at par with what I want it to be? Maybe I've set it up as 80% or 90%, of my resource time to be spent across various projects. I'm giving that 10 to 20% for the self-learning. Okay. How many of the projects are there within the organization wherein my resources are not being able to consume the 10-20%? Okay. Or how many of those projects and programs are there wherein the resource utilization is at par with what I as an organization, as a PMO, have set up, right? And then, for example, how many, as I took an example earlier, how many green initiative projects or programs that I have? Okay. What has been the outcome of those green initiative projects? I thought I will have a net neutral, net neutrality by 2030. If that is my go-to, okay, as a PMO organization, what are some of the KPIs that I will set it up? Okay. And it is not a big bang KPI that I'm going to set up. I'm going to have those, quarterly or half yearly or annual horizon, planning done. And I will keep checkpoints in terms of, am I going slowly towards that net neutrality target by 2030 or whatever the time is. Okay. So it always depends on the strategic objectives becoming initiatives, becoming programs, projects. And it's both ways. It's not just one way. It is top down as well as bottom up. I hope I was able to answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that resolves the query. Now, moving on to the second question, I think Mr. Habiba has a question regarding the different PMO certifications. So, to answer that, we have different PMO certifications and any project management certifications that are not they're not directly required to get the PMO certification. You can find details of the PMO GI certifications in the on the website. The link to that Sukriya will share in this chat box and also in the LinkedIn Live comment box. All right. So that concludes our discussion. As we near the end of this super enriching session, I want to take another moment to thank Mr. Shashank Kumar and both our panelists, Mr. Prashant and Mr. Abdullah, for their invaluable contributions today. I'm sure everyone here has gained actionable insights to apply in their respective professional journeys. Before we conclude, Sukriya will share the link to the quiz for all participants in the chat box. Please do not miss out on the opportunity to win our appreciation certificate, which will be given to the winners of this quiz. Sukriya, please share the link in the chat, and this link will also be available in the comment box of the LinkedIn Live session. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending this session today. Please stay connected with the PMO Global Institute India chapter for more such events. Have a great day ahead and a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Suen.
And thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Have a nice weekend. Thank
Have a
you.
nice day, all of you. Thanks. I
Take
hope to remain connected and be part of such, webinar or some sessions or any initiatives, anything that we need to do in India. Hope so.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's close the session with a
Thank
big round of applause. Thank you everyone for joining today. Really appreciate and see you soon again in another
Thank
event.
you.
Take yourself. Yeah. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.